I didn't think much of it the first time I saw Ian wearing my hoodie. Actually, that's a lie. I thought a lot about it, I just didn't say anything. It was a random Tuesday morning, one of those slow, quiet ones where the apartment still smelled like yesterday's coffee, and neither of us had fully woken up yet. I walked into the kitchen half asleep, expecting to see Ian in his usual gym shorts and some tight-fitting t-shirt that made it very obvious he had no trouble attracting girls. Instead, he was wearing my black, oversized hoodie, the one I'd been looking for 3 days. He was leaning against the counter, scrolling on his phone, looking completely normal, like this wasn't weird at all. Like he hadn't just casually put on something that smelled like my laundry detergent and, if I was being honest, probably still faintly like me. I stopped in the doorway, just watching him for a second. He glanced up. "Morning. Morning," I said slowly, still processing. That's my hoodie." He looked down at himself like he'd forgotten he was wearing it. Then he shrugged. "Yeah, I know. It was in the dryer. Figured you wouldn't mind." "Wouldn't mind." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "You figured right. I just didn't know we were at the borrow clothes without asking stage." He smirked a little. "Relax, Parker. It's just a hoodie." Something about the way he said my name casual, confident, made my chest tighten for a second. Ian had always been like that. Effortless. The kind of guy who didn't overthink anything. Meanwhile, I overthought everything, especially when it came to him. We'd been roommates for about 6 months. Met through a mutual friend. Needed a place fast. Ended up signing a lease together. At first, it was simple, 2 guys sharing space, splitting rent, doing our own thing. And Ian was straight. Very straight. Girlfriends, late-night calls on the balcony, yeah. There was no confusion there. So I kept things easy. Friendly. Safe. But this was new. "You look weirdly comfortable in it," I said before I could stop myself. He glanced at me again, a little more interested this time. Yeah, I admitted. "Better than me, honestly." He laughed under his breath. "That's because you buy everything 2 sizes too big. It's called style," I shot back. He said, clearly unconvinced. Then, after a second, he added, "Actually, that's kind of why I put it on." I blinked. "What?" He set his phone down and tugged lightly at the hem of the hoodie, looking at it like he was evaluating it. "I don't know. It just looks different. Better than my stuff." That caught me off guard. "You're serious?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, shrugging again. But this time there was something more thoughtful behind it. "My clothes are all the same. Basic. Boring. You actually look like you know what you're doing." I let out a small laugh. "You're asking me for fashion advice now?" "I'm not asking," he said, smirking again. "I'm observing." "Sure you are." There was a brief silence, but it wasn't awkward. Just new. Ian picked up his phone again, then paused like he was about to say something else. He looked at me, hesitated, then went for it. "Okay, but like, if I was asking," he said slowly, "what would you tell me?" I raised an eyebrow. "You want the truth?" "Obviously." I pushed myself off the doorframe and walked closer, studying him properly now. The hoodie hung off his shoulders in a way that felt unfair, effortless, like he hadn't even tried and somehow still pulled it off. "First of all," I said, circling him slightly like I was analyzing a project, "you need looser fits. You've got the build for it, you're just hiding it under those tight shirts." He looked down at himself again, like he was seeing it differently now. "And second," I continued, "you need layers, texture, not just one plain thing." Ian nodded slowly. "Okay, yeah, that makes sense." I stopped in front of him again, realizing I was standing closer than I probably should be. Close enough to notice the faint scent of his cologne mixed with my hoodie. Close enough that it made my thoughts a little messy. I stepped back. "So what? You're gonna let me redo your entire wardrobe now?" I joked. He met my eyes, and for a second, the smirk faded into something more serious. "Maybe," he said. That one word landed heavier than it should have. I laughed it off, turning toward the coffee machine. "Careful. I might actually take that seriously." "Good," he replied, without missing a beat. I froze for half a second, my back still turned to him. Something about his tone had changed. Subtle but noticeable. And for the first time since we started living together, I had this strange, unsettling thought. Maybe this wasn't just about clothes. The thing is, moments like that don't feel like a big deal when they happen. It's just a hoodie, just a conversation. But looking back, that was the start of everything. And I should have realized it sooner. Because a week later, Ian wasn't just borrowing my clothes anymore. He was asking me what to wear. And the way he looked at me while doing it? Yeah, that's when things really started to get complicated. By the end of that week, Ian had worn 3 more of my hoodies, not even subtly. At first, I told myself it was just convenience. Laundry, timing, whatever excuse made it feel normal. But then it stopped being random, because he started asking. The first time was casual. Too casual. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, pretending to work while actually scrolling through nothing, when Ian walked out of his room wearing one of his usual outfits, tight gray t-shirt, fitted jeans. He stopped in front of me. "Does this look boring to you?" I looked up, blinking. "You've worn that exact outfit like 5 times this week." He frowned slightly, like that genuinely bothered him now. "Yeah, that's what I mean." I tried not to smile. "Wow, personal growth." "Shut up," he muttered. But there was no bite to it. Then he nodded toward my room. "Can I try something of yours?" That question hit different than the hoodie thing. Because now he wasn't just grabbing stuff. He was choosing to. I hesitated for half a second, then shrugged. "Yeah, sure. Go for it." Ian didn't move right away. He just stood there, watching me. "Come with me," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He smirked slightly. "Because I have no idea what I'm doing, Parker." Something about the way he said it, half joking, half serious, made it hard to say no. So I closed my laptop and followed him to my room. I didn't realize how weird this would feel until we were actually standing there. My room suddenly felt smaller, more personal. Like Ian didn't belong in it in the same way he did in the living room or kitchen. He looked around, taking everything in the clothes rack, the folded stacks, the mirror. "Damn," he said quietly. "You really care about this stuff." I shrugged, trying to play it off. "It's just clothes. Doesn't look like just clothes." I ignored that and walked over to my rack, flipping through hangers. "Okay, what are you going for?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Something that looks like you'd wear it." I paused. "Dangerous request," I said lightly. "Why?" I glanced back at him. "Because I dress differently than you." He held my gaze, completely unfazed. "Yeah, that's the point." There it was again. That shift. Subtle, but real. I turned back to the rack, trying to focus. "All right, try this." I pulled out an oversized white tee and tossed it to him. He caught it easily, then glanced down at his current shirt. "You want me to change now?" I shrugged. "Unless you want to layer it over that, which—" "No." He laughed under his breath and, without overthinking it, grabbed the hem of his shirt and pulled it off. Just like that. No hesitation. And I wasn't prepared for that. I'd seen Ian shirtless before. It wasn't new. Gym mornings, random walks to the bathroom, whatever. But this felt different. Because now I was standing 2 feet away, watching, trying very hard not to stare. "Something wrong?" he asked, noticing the silence. I forced myself to look up at his face. "No, you're just slow." He snorted. "Relax." Then he pulled on the shirt I gave him. It hung differently on him. Looser, softer. It made his shoulders look broader somehow, his waist narrower. I crossed my arms, studying him. "Okay," I said slowly. "That's already better." "Yeah?" he asked, turning slightly toward the mirror. "Yeah." He stepped closer to it, adjusting the fabric, pulling it down, then letting it fall naturally. "Feels weird," he admitted. "But good weird." I leaned against the wall. "You're not used to not showing everything." He glanced at me through the mirror. "You saying I show off?" "I'm saying you can pull that off," I said. "But this makes people look twice." He didn't respond right away, just kept looking at himself. Then, quietly, "You really think so?" Something about the way he asked that it wasn't confident. It wasn't Ian being his usual self. It was genuine. "Yeah," I said. "I do." He turned around to face me fully now. And for a second, neither of us said anything. Because the energy had shifted again. Stronger this time. Like we both felt it, but neither of us wanted to name it. "So what else?" he asked finally, breaking the moment. I exhaled slowly, pushing myself off the wall. "Jeans. Not those. You need something looser." He nodded immediately. "All right, show me." And just like that, it became a thing. Not just a one-time moment. Not just a hoodie. Ian started coming to me before going out, asking what worked, trying things on, standing too close while I adjusted sleeves or fixed collars. And every time it felt a little more charged, a little less innocent. But I kept telling myself the same thing over and over. He's straight. This doesn't mean anything. Except the way he looked at me sometimes? Yeah. That was getting harder to explain. At some point, it stopped feeling like I had a roommate. Started feeling like I had a client. Except this client walked around my apartment half-dressed, knocked on my door at random hours, and had no concept of personal space anymore. And the worst part? I didn't stop him. It was a Friday night when things really shifted again. Ian had planned some party, something with his usual crowd. Normally, that meant him throwing on whatever tight shirt showed off the most and leaving without a second thought. But not anymore. This time, he knocked on my door. "Parker." I looked up from my bed. "Yeah." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, already dressed in one of my outfit's black oversized tee. Loose jeans I'd lent him earlier that week. "Be honest," he said. "Is this good? Or am I embarrassing you out there?" I sat up, studying him. "Turn around." He smirked. "You just like telling me what to do now." "Turn around, Ian." He did it anyway, slowly. And yeah, that didn't help. I got up, walking toward him, trying to ignore how natural this had started to feel being this close, adjusting his clothes like it was normal. I tugged lightly at the back of his shirt. "You're bunching it here." "Yeah?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. "Yeah, relax." I smoothed it down without thinking. My fingers brushed his lower back for a second longer than necessary. Neither of us moved. Then I stepped back quickly. "There. Better." He turned to face me again, closer than before. "Anything else?" His voice was quieter now. I hesitated, because suddenly this didn't feel like styling anymore. Felt like something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet, but I definitely felt it. Cleared my throat. "You could roll the sleeves a bit." He glanced down at them, then back at me. "Show me." Of course he said that. I stepped forward again, reaching for his sleeve. "Like this?" I said, folding it once, then again, my fingers brushing his arm as I adjusted it. His skin was warm. Too warm. "You always this hands-on with people?" he asked. I huffed a quiet laugh. "Only the ones who can't dress themselves." "Wow." But he didn't pull away. Not even a little. I finished the second sleeve, then looked up. And he was already looking at me. Closer than I expected. Close enough that if I leaned in even slightly. "Yeah. No." I stepped back again, creating space that probably should have been there the whole time. "Okay," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Now you're good." He didn't move right away, just kept watching me. "Say it," he said. "What?" "That it looks good." I rolled my eyes. "It looks good, Ian." "No," he said, taking a small step closer. "Say it like you mean it." I let out a breath, shaking my head. "You're unbelievable. Come on." I looked at him again. Really looked this time. At how different he seemed now. Not just the clothes, but the way he carried himself. The way he was paying attention to me. "It looks really good," I said finally, quieter now. Something shifted in his expression. Subtle, but there. Like that answer mattered more than it should have. He didn't leave right away, which was weird. Normally, Ian would be halfway out the door by now, checking his phone, texting whoever he was meeting. but instead he just stood there. You ever think about it? He asked suddenly. My stomach tightened. Think about what? This? He said, gesturing vaguely between us. You helping me with stuff. Me wearing your clothes. I frowned slightly. What about it? He shrugged, but it didn't feel casual. I don't know. Just didn't expect it. Me neither. That part was definitely true. He nodded slowly, like he was processing something. Then, quieter. You don't think it's weird? There it was. The question underneath everything. I held his gaze for a second. Do you think it's weird? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me in that same way he had been all week, like he was trying to figure something out. No, he said finally. Not really. My heart did something stupid in my chest. Then it's not weird, I said. Another pause. Then he nodded like that settled it. Okay. He left a few minutes later. But the apartment felt different after that. Quieter. Heavier. And I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head. Not the clothes. Not the styling. But the way he asked that question. Like he needed to hear that it wasn't weird. Like he needed me to say it. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about fashion anymore. Because the next time he came into my room, he wasn't asking what to wear. He was asking something else entirely. The next time Ian came into my room, he didn't knock. He just pushed the door open like he belonged there. Parker. I glanced up from my phone, already feeling that familiar tension settle in my chest. You're really getting comfortable just walking in now, huh? Yeah, he said simply, closing the door behind him. That was new. I sat up a little straighter. What's up? He didn't answer right away. Just stood there for a second, like he was trying to figure out how to say something. Then he walked closer. No outfit today? I asked, trying to keep things light. He shook his head. Not this time. Something about his tone made my stomach tighten. Okay, I said slowly. Then what? He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, something he only did when he was actually nervous. I've been thinking about what you said. I frowned slightly. I say a lot of things. You'll have to be specific. He gave a small, distracted huff. About it not being weird. Oh, that, yeah, I said, more careful now. He nodded, eyes flicking up to meet mine. And I don't think it is. Not really. I swallowed. Okay. But, he added. Of course there was a but. But what? I asked. He hesitated again, stepping even closer now, close enough that I could feel the shift in the air. The same one that had been building for days, just stronger this time. But I keep thinking about it, he said quietly. My chest tightened. Thinking about what exactly? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I actually wanted the answer. This, he said again, that same vague gesture between us, but now it felt way less vague. My pulse picked up. Ian, I don't know what I'm doing. He cut in, his voice lower now. Like, I've never. He stopped himself. But it didn't matter. I already understood. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. I stood up slowly, mostly because sitting suddenly felt too vulnerable. Hey, I said, trying to ground the moment a little. You don't have to figure anything out right now. He looked at me like that wasn't enough. Like he needed more. That's the problem, he said. I am trying to figure it out. I exhaled, running a hand through my own hair now. Okay. And what does that mean? His eyes dropped for a second, then came back up. It means, I notice things now, he admitted. My throat went dry. What kind of things? You, he said. Simple, direct, and way too much. I let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. Ian, I'm serious, he said, stepping even closer. Now there was barely any space between us. I notice the way you look at me sometimes, he continued. And I don't, he paused, searching for words. I don't hate it. That hit harder than anything else he'd said. I forced myself to hold his gaze. You don't hate it. He shook his head slowly. No. Another silence. But this one felt different. Not uncertain. Just loaded. You're straight, I said finally. Because someone had to say it. I know. he replied immediately. And I'm not exactly subtle about being into guys. I know that too. Then you see why this is confusing? He cut in. I nodded. Yeah. He took a breath, like he was steadying himself. Yeah, he said. It is. For a second, it felt like that might be the end of it. Like we'd just acknowledge it and move on. But then, so what if I don't want to ignore it? He said. My heart literally stuttered. Ian, I warned, because this was the line. This was the moment where things either stayed safe or didn't. But he didn't back off. If I asked you something, he said carefully, would you just answer honestly? That depends, I said. On what? On what you're asking. He nodded slowly like he expected that. Then he took one last small step forward. And yeah, now there was no space between us. What does it mean? He asked quietly. That I don't want you to stop? I felt my breath catch. Stop what? I managed. He held my gaze. This, he said softly. Looking at me like that. Being close. Helping me. All of it. For a second, I couldn't speak. Because the answer, the honest answer, it would change everything. You really want to know? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. I swallowed, my voice lower now. It means, I said slowly, that this isn't just about clothes anymore. His jaw tightened slightly, like that landed exactly where it was supposed to. And what is it about then? He asked. I didn't answer right away, didn't move, didn't breathe, because if I said it out loud, there was no going back. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted to go back anymore. And that was the moment everything shifted. Because the next thing that happened, that's where it stopped being confusing and started being real. I should have said something safe, something neutral, something that would have slowed everything down before it went too far. But instead, I just stood there, looking at him, knowing exactly what he was asking, even if he didn't fully understand it himself. And what is it about then? Ian repeated quietly. I exhaled slowly, my voice lower now. It's about you not wanting this to be just nothing, I said. And me not pretending I don't feel it. His eyes flickered, like something in that answer hit deeper than he expected. You feel it? He asked. I let out a short breath, almost a laugh. Ian, I've been feeling it. That was probably the most honest thing I'd said to him. And it changed the air instantly. He swallowed, his gaze dropping for a second before coming back up. Okay, yeah. I figured. You figured. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not blind, he said, a little more defensive now. I see the way you look at me. Yeah, I said quietly. And you didn't hate it. He shook his head again. No. Another pause. Closer now. Heavier. So what does that mean for you? I asked. He hesitated. Then softer. I don't know yet. Fair. At least he wasn't pretending. But I know I don't want it to stop, he added. There it was again. That same line. That same pull. I studied him for a second, trying to read him, not the confident, effortless version of Ian I was used to. But this one. The one standing in front of me now, actually unsure for once. You realize this doesn't stay simple if we don't stop, I said. I know. And you're okay with that? Another pause. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said. I think I am. I searched his face for any hesitation. There was some. But there was also something else. Curiosity. And something that looked a lot like trust. That's what got me. Not the words. That. Okay, I said finally. His expression shifted slightly. Okay. Yeah. I took a small step closer again, closing the space that had barely existed anyway. But if we're not pretending anymore, I added, then you don't get to act like you don't understand what this is. He held my gaze. I won't. Good. Another second passed. Quiet. Charged. And then, he did something small. But it changed everything. He reached out. Not suddenly. Not impulsively. Slow. Careful. Like he was giving me time to stop him if I wanted to. His hand hovered for a second, then lightly caught the edge of my sleeve. Just like that. Barely anything. But it felt like way more. "You're not stopping me," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I shook my head slightly. "No." His fingers tightened just a little. Still not pulling. Still not forcing anything. Just there. Grounding. Testing. And yeah, I didn't move. Didn't pull away. Didn't break eye contact. Because at that point, I was already in it. "I've never done this before," he admitted. "I know. And you have." "Yeah." His grip shifted slightly, his thumb brushing the fabric of my sleeve absent-mindedly. "Then, you're gonna have to tell me if I mess something up." I let out a quiet breath. "You're not messing anything up. Yet," he said. I almost smiled. "Relax," I said. "You're doing fine." That seemed to calm him more than it should have. He nodded once. Then, he didn't let go. And neither did I. We stayed like that for a while. Not talking. Not moving much. Just standing there way too close, both fully aware that this was new territory. For him. For us. Eventually, I shifted slightly, my hand brushing his wrist, not pushing it away. Just acknowledging it. He looked down at the contact, then back at me. "Still okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. The thing is, nothing big happened in that moment. No dramatic move. No sudden rush. Just that. Him not letting go. Me not pulling away. Both of us choosing to stay right there. But that's the part people don't get. It's not always the big moments that change everything. Sometimes it's the quiet ones. The ones where you realize you're already past the point of going back. Because later that night, he didn't go out anymore. And instead, he stayed. In my room. With me. And yeah, that's when things got even harder to ignore. Ian didn't go to the party. That alone should have told me how serious this had gotten. Because in 6 months of living together, I'd never seen him cancel plans. Especially not last minute. Especially not for this. But he did. He just sat down on the edge of my bed like it was the most normal thing in the world. "You're not going?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He shook his head, staring down at his hands for a second. "Nah. Your friends are gonna be pissed. They'll live." I watched him carefully. "This is new." He glanced up at me. "Yeah." There was no joke in it this time. No deflection. Just honesty. And that made it feel heavier than anything else. For a while, we didn't talk much. I leaned back against the headboard, trying to act normal, while Ian just sat there, elbows on his knees, like he was thinking through something way bigger than either of us had expected this to become. "So what now?" he asked eventually. I exhaled slowly. "That's kind of up to you." He frowned slightly. "Why me?" "Because you're the one figuring things out," I said. "I already know where I stand." His jaw tightened a little at that. "Yeah," he muttered. "I guess that's fair." Silence again. But not empty. Just full. He shifted slightly on the bed, turning more toward me. "You ever had this happen before?" he asked. "With a straight roommate suddenly stealing my clothes and questioning his entire identity?" I raised an eyebrow. A small smile flickered across his face. "Yeah, exactly that." "No," I said. "Can't say I have." He nodded like that made sense. "Does it always feel like this?" he asked. "Like what?" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Like everything's louder," he said finally. "Even when nothing's happening." That hit a little too accurately. "Yeah," I admitted. "Sometimes." He let out a breath, leaning back on his hands now. "Good," he said quietly. "Thought I was losing it." I almost smiled. "You're not losing it." "Feels like it." Another pause. Then he looked at me again. "Can I ask you something else?" "You've been doing that all night," I said. "Yeah, well, this one's different." That got my attention. "Okay," I said. "Go ahead." He hesitated longer this time. Long enough that I could see the hesitation written all over his face. Then, "Why didn't you stop me?" he asked. My stomach tightened slightly. "When?" "Earlier," he said. "When I grabbed your sleeve. When I didn't let go." I held his gaze. "Because I didn't want to," I said honestly. He swallowed. Yeah, he said softly. That's what I thought. He shifted again, moving a little closer this time. Not dramatic. Just enough. You could still stop this, he added. I know. But you're not. No. Another quiet moment passed between us. And then, neither are you, I pointed out. He let out a small breath, almost a laugh. Yeah, guess not. There was something different about him now. Less guarded, less sure, but also more real. Like he'd dropped whatever version of himself he usually showed everyone else. And what was left was this. I keep thinking about what you said, he admitted after a while. Which part? That this isn't just about clothes anymore. I nodded slowly. Yeah. He looked at me, more serious now. So what does it look like if we don't ignore it? That question sat between us. Heavy, real, and impossible to answer without changing everything. It looks like things get complicated, I said. How? You start noticing more, I explained. You start wanting more. And once that happens, it's hard to go back to how things were before. He listened carefully, didn't interrupt, didn't joke. Would you want to go back? He asked. I didn't even hesitate. No, that answer felt too easy. But it was true. He nodded slowly, like he was expecting that. Then he looked down again, his fingers tapping lightly against the mattress. I don't think I would either, he admitted. My chest tightened slightly at that. Okay, I said quietly, and then he did it again. That same slow, careful movement, reaching out, this time not for my sleeve, but for my hand, not fully grabbing it, just letting his fingers brush against mine first, testing, waiting, like before, giving me time to stop him. I didn't. Instead, I let my hand shift slightly toward his, closing that last bit of distance. Our fingers touched properly this time, and neither of us pulled away. He exhaled slowly. Still okay? He asked, almost under his breath. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. We didn't say anything after that. Didn't need to, because at that point, we both knew. This wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't just curiosity. This was something real, something we were both choosing, even if we didn't fully understand it yet. And the way his fingers tightened slightly around mine, that was the moment I realized. The next step wasn't going to be accidental. There's something about silence when it's shared like that. Not awkward, not empty, just full. That's what it felt like, sitting there with Ian, his hand still loosely wrapped around mine like he hadn't fully decided if he was allowed to hold it, but also not letting go. And honestly, neither had I. He was the first one to move, not pulling away, just shifting slightly, turning more toward me on the bed so we weren't sitting at an angle anymore. So now we were facing each other, close, too close to pretend this was still casual. You're really calm about this, he said quietly. I let out a small breath. I'm not as calm as I look. He studied my face for a second, like he was trying to confirm that. Yeah, he said. I can tell. I almost smiled. Good. His thumb moved slightly against my hand. Just a small motion, but it was enough to send that same sharp awareness through me again. You ever get used to this? He asked. To what? This feeling, he said. Like, everything matters more. I shook my head slightly. Not really. Great, he muttered under his breath. I huffed a quiet laugh. You don't want it to go away anyway. He didn't argue, because he knew I was right. Another pause. Then he looked at me again, more serious now. I keep thinking I'm gonna do something wrong, he admitted. You're not. How do you know? Because you're not forcing anything, I said. You're paying attention. That's kind of the whole point. He nodded slowly, like he was taking that in. Okay. There was a shift after that. Subtle, but real. Like something in him relaxed just enough. Parker, he said after a second. Yeah. If I did something, he started, then stopped. I raised an eyebrow. That's vague. He huffed softly. I know. Then more quietly, if I tried something, you'd tell me if it's too much, right? I held his gaze. Yeah, I said. I would. That seemed to be all he needed. Because the next thing he did wasn't hesitant in the same way anymore. Still careful. Still slow. But more certain. He shifted closer again, barely any space left now in his hand. The one already holding mine tightened just a little before letting go. Not completely. Just enough so he could move it. And then he reached up. Not all the way. Just stopping near my shoulder. Hovering for half a second. Waiting. I didn't move. Didn't stop him. Didn't look away. So he let his hand rest there. Lightly. Like he was still testing the boundary. My breath caught slightly, but I stayed still. Let him figure it out. You're still not stopping me, he said quietly. No, I replied. His fingers shifted slightly against my shoulder. More sure now. And then he stepped just a little closer. Close enough that I could feel his breath. Close enough that if either of us moved even an inch, that line was right there. This is the part where I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. I let out a quiet breath. You don't have to know everything. Yeah, he said softly. But I want to get it right. Something about that. About him actually caring. That's what got me. You are, I said. He looked at me, searching my face again. Yeah. Another second passed. And then another. Neither of us moving. Neither of us backing off. Until finally, he made a decision. I could see it happen. That moment where hesitation turns into choice. He leaned in slightly. Not all the way. Just enough to close most of the distance. Stopping just short. Waiting. Giving me one last chance to pull away. I didn't. And that was all he needed. He closed the gap. Slow. Careful. Like everything else he'd done so far. And yet, that was the moment it stopped being uncertain. Not rushed. Not overwhelming. Just real. And the crazy part? For the first time since all of this started, neither of us questioned it. Because at that point, we already knew. There was no going back to just roommates anymore. It didn't feel dramatic. That's the part that stuck with me the most. No rush. No panic. No sudden "what the hell are we doing?" moment. Just him. Close. Certain. And me not pulling away. When he closed that last bit of distance, everything else kind of faded. Not in some over-the-top way. Just enough that I stopped overthinking for once. His hand was still on my shoulder. Steady now. Not tentative like before. And for a second, we both just stayed there, like even after crossing that line. Neither of us wanted to rush past it. I let out a slow breath. You okay? I asked quietly. Felt like something I needed to say. Not because I thought he wasn't, but because this was new for him. And I didn't want to be the reason he felt pushed into anything. He nodded almost immediately. Yeah, he said. I am. Then, after a second, a little more honestly, I didn't think I would be. I almost smiled at that. Yeah. It's not always what you expect, I said. He looked at me again. Closer than ever now. His expression different than I'd ever seen it before. Not confused. Not unsure. Just focused. On me. I get it now, he said quietly. Get what? Why you said it wouldn't stay simple. I let out a small breath. Yeah. He shook his head slightly, almost like he was trying to process it in real time. It's not just one thing, he said. It's everything around it. That's kind of how it works. He huffed softly. That's insane. You're telling me. There was a pause. But this one felt lighter. Like the tension had shifted into something more stable. Still intense. Still real. But not as uncertain. He sat back slightly after a moment, running a hand through his hair again, but this time it wasn't nerves. It was more like processing. Okay, he said under his breath. Okay. I leaned back against the headboard again, watching him. You regretting it already? I asked, half joking, but not entirely. His head snapped up immediately. No. Too fast. Too certain. That answered that. Good, I said. He held my gaze for a second longer, then shook his head again. No, I'm just... He paused, searching for the right word. trying to understand how I went from borrowing your hoodie to this. I laughed quietly. Yeah, that timeline escalated pretty fast. Seriously, he said, a small smile finally breaking through. What the hell, Parker? Hey, I said, holding my hands up slightly. You started it. Oh, I started it? You literally stole my clothes. He pointed at me. You let me. Didn't think it would lead to an existential crisis. Yeah, well, he muttered, leaning back on his hands. Neither did I. Another quiet moment settled in. But this one felt easier, like we'd crossed the hardest part. So what now? He asked again. I tilted my head slightly. You're really stuck on that question. Yeah, because I don't exactly have a roadmap for this. Fair. I thought about it for a second. Now, we don't rush anything, I said. We don't pretend it didn't happen. And we don't force it into something it's not. He listened carefully, nodded. Okay, he said. I can do that. He stood up after a moment, pacing once across the room before stopping again. Then he looked back at me. And we're good? He asked. That question was different. Not about this. About us. I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I said. We're good. Something in his shoulders relaxed at that. Okay, he said again, quieter this time. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Hey, Parker. Yeah. He glanced back at me, a small, almost unsure smile on his face. You still gonna help me with my style? I huffed a quiet laugh. Of course. He nodded like that mattered. Good. Then he opened the door, paused again, and added, a little more casually, and maybe other stuff too. I shook my head, smiling despite myself. We'll see. He left after that. And just like that, the room felt different again. But not in a bad way. Not heavy. Not tense. Just changed. Because the truth is, it didn't feel like something ended. Felt like something started. Something messy. Something complicated. Something we didn't fully understand yet. But something real. And yet, all because my straight roommate decided to wear my hoodie one morning.